We are pleased to welcome Dr. Chitja Twala to the Osaka School of International Public Policy. He has come to us from the University of the Free State in South Africa, and he's going to talk to us today about the Marikana incident in 2012 in South Africa. Welcome to the Osaka School of International Public Policy.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. We're going to talk today about the incidents that happened in Marikana in South Africa in 2012. Some call it a massacre, others call it a tragedy. Do you think it is appropriate to use the word massacre?
One should start by indicating that people died on the 16th of August 2012 in South Africa in Marikana. As to whether we connote that to being a tragedy or a massacre, it doesn't change anything because lives were lost, and although other people would prefer to call it a tragedy, but I would prefer to call it a massacre because police used live ammunition to kill 34 miners in Marikana. I would equate that to a massacre.
So you believe that the police went beyond the scope of what could be termed self-defense?
Definitely so. Although the miners themselves were carrying different weapons, but I want to believe that the police could have taken the route of using alternative kind of protection for themselves rather than using live ammunition. Here I'm talking about perhaps using rubber bullets, perhaps using water tanks to disperse the crowd. But the police had the wire razor in front of them, and which divided them from the mine workers themselves. Then I don't want to understand, and it is difficult for me to comprehend as to why would it be said that the police were under fierce attack as they alleged to have been under fierce attack. I don't believe that.
I see. Okay. And then in the broader scope of things, given what we know now, 2 years after what happened, how might we apportion blame for what happened?
It would be difficult to apportion blame because investigations are still underway. In October 2012, the President, Honorable Jacob Zuma, instituted a Falam Commission in order to look at what really transpired on the said day. But I would say we don't even need to critically question the Commission's report if it comes out, because there are video clips that specifically shows that the police shot at the people and at the striking miners, and perhaps one should take it from there and say this is the incident that it took place, and collectively, whether the police or the person who instructed the police to shoot or any other politician involved or the mine bosses or the union leaders should collectively take blame of what happened in Marikana on the 16th of August 2012.
Yeah, so in terms of the events that led up to the actual shooting, we can certainly see what happened on video from what came out from the media and even from cameras that were being operated by the police themselves. We can see what happened on that day. But in terms of the events leading up to that, we saw a split in the labor unions. We of course see the huge gap between the wealth that is being owned by the mine owners as compared to the very low wages that the workers are receiving. And then we also see the failure of these parties to come together to improve those conditions. How do you see the blame or the responsibility, I guess, in terms of the events leading up to the day?
You know, the events leading up to the said day, it's multifold kind of reasons behind that. it will be myopic for us if we only look at the economic part of it. But the mining sector in South Africa generally is fragmented. In terms of the unions that are representing the mine workers, themselves are not united. It is just a fragmented kind of a structure. Here I'll refer to the National Union of Mine Workers, which was recognized by the Lone Min Mine in Marikana. Mine workers, they've got any right to belong to any trade union. But unfortunately, if people are dissatisfied for whatever reason with a trade union, they can join any other trade union. And that is when we see the moving up of AMCO to occupy that economic and political space in the mining area, particularly when we talk about the platinum belt where Lone Min is. And would say, for an example, that when we want to apportion blame, we should check all the different avenues and all the factors that led to that. One other aspect that we need also to unpack, it is the question of saying, how is the mining industry in South Africa? Is it merely benefiting the mine workers by creating jobs and their families, or it is mainly benefiting the mine bosses? If we can try by all means to unpack that, perhaps we can get a clarity as to why the miners will feel exploited by the owners of the mines in terms of wages and in terms of the living conditions around the mines. You would recall that the spark of this whole massacre or tragedy, if you want to call it like that, it is the question of wages. The question of people getting 4,000 rand and then people demanding 12,500 or 12,000 rand. Then, you know, it is an up gap of 3 times what people used to get. And then realistically so, with the huge kind of inflation experienced by all different countries, including South Africa, one would think that the mine workers were justified in demanding 3,500. But if the mine workers, the unions, and the mine bosses cannot come around the table and negotiate over such issues, then we are still going to experience such problems as the Marikana massacre. But I want to believe that if all the ears could listen to each other, and we wouldn't be having the question of Marikana as we have experienced it in 2012.
Okay, so the Farlam Commission was established to look into the events of the day itself, right? And we will have an outcome on that. But are there any steps that are being taken, would you think, to address the kind of issues that you've just raised in terms of this huge gap? One, I guess, between the huge gap between the wealth controlled by the mine workers and that received by the mine workers themselves, and secondly, I guess, between the failure of conflict resolution mechanisms between the two parties via the labor unions.
In question of bringing back stability and peace in the mining sector in South Africa, I think it was good enough and it is commendable that the President, Honorable Jacob Zuma, formed and established a commission under the leadership of the retired Judge Farlam, in order to look at the truth as to what exactly transpired during the 30 day. I think that is commendable. It is a good thing to do in order to avoid all speculations about the incident itself. I would say in terms of redressing all the problems that the mining industry is experiencing in South Africa, I don't think that will happen overnight. I don't think that will also change when we receive the report from Judge Farlam. I think it is something that is embedded within the whole industry, and then it is going to take some time in order to be resolved. But at this point in time, there is relative stability, but the unions are still divided. and the mine workers are still looking for what they believe it is true to them. And I think that as time goes by, and then perhaps with the recommendations from the Falam Commission, and we'll have a little bit of progress in terms of addressing the question of mining in South Africa. One should also indicate that there are some elements to this, whereby the miners, as human beings, would say that the mine bosses or the mine owners are collecting revenue amounting to billions of rands in terms of the profit that they make from the mines. But in terms of the people who are doing what I can call the dirty work, are getting far little than what is received by the mine bosses. That is, I think, it's a huge problem, and that is creating mining problems in South African mines. I think it is also incumbent upon the ruling party also to steer up the gear in terms of addressing the problems in the mines. These problems are not only problems in the mines, but only in many of the working sectors of the different factories in South Africa. The huge gap between the rich and the poor. And then people who claim that they are making a lot of money, but what comes to their pockets at the end of the month, at the end of the week, it is far less than what they produce. I think if the ruling party can try by all means to address that, and then as a country, South Africa will go a little bit too far.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.